Everyone, it's Michael with Sam. Part 2 of how to set up Node.js, Express, MongoDB, Bower, and Gulp. In part 1, I focused on setup. In part 2, we're actually going to create the website because I did not touch MongoDB at all. What type of website are we going to create? We're going to create a website with users, login, sign up, and a content section. Now, to get started, if you already know a lot about Node.js and just want to use the template, all the source code will be available on GitHub. You can visit this link, which will be in the description. I'll leave a README so that you know what you have to do to set up locally. And this image shows you what it actually will kind of look like. It's going to be a simple page with sign up with using Passport for authentication. It has sessions. It will have a place where you can post and comment. And down here will be instructions for local development. You can either keep on going and building up your own personal site with MongoDB and the rest, or you can just clone all the source code, cd, change directory into the folder, and then install everything, because in part 1 we already have set up all 5 components. And lastly, 5 terminals. You set up the database, you set up the Mongo console, and then you start the server, and you can visit it locally at localhost 30 or 3000, I mean. Alright, so, and as always, I finished the blog post, and so I'll leave this blog post with all the instructions, all the explanations. In the source code, there will be a lot of comments on what each part actually does, but in the video itself, I'll not rewrite everything because I don't think it's useful to rewrite all the code. It's more useful to just explain it. So, as always, look at the source code, which will be in the description for anything that you did not see in the video. Alright, so the first thing that we do is here we have already installed MongoDB in part 1. Now we need to add it into our environment path on Windows operating systems. Now, to add MongoDB on environment path, we need to see where it is first. Now, MongoDB is usually in the C drive, in program files, in a folder called MongoDB, server, the version number, and bin. We need to be able to access all these executables within our terminal, and it won't be available in the beginning because when you install MongoDB, it does not add MongoDB binaries to your path. So we need to copy this part, right click, copy, and now we will add this folder to our environment path. So we hit this PC, we right click it, and go to properties. We go to advanced system settings. We make sure that we're on the advanced tab, and then we hit environment variables. Now, we look at our system variables and we find path. We click on this path, and we hit edit. After we hit edit, we can edit our environment variable. We scroll all the way to the bottom, and I've already added my environment variable, or my folder. I've already added this folder, but I'll delete it for 1 second and add it again using the new button. And you just paste the path of MongoDB binaries, and then you hit OK. And you hit OK, and you hit OK again. Make sure you hit all 3 OKs. You can X out of this, X out of this. The first thing that we do is we're going to set up the MongoDB database because we didn't even touch that in part 1. We open up a Node.js terminal by searching it, node.js command prompt. And here's our command prompt. I zoomed in the command prompt because in part 1 I didn't really zoom in the command prompt. Now, the first thing that you want to do is you want to cd, you want to change directory into the project folder. Now, all my stuff is on my desktop. So I'll cd to my desktop, I'll cd to some folders, and I use tab to autocomplete, and I hit enter. Now that I'm in that folder, I've already added all the contents of the project here. This is the most up-to-date project, so I added a lot of files, and that's why I recommend you to look at the GitHub source code. And this video is more of explanation instead of you just watching me write stuff, because you won't learn that way. Now, you make directory data if you're building on top of the old project, and once you make the directory data, this folder will be created. So it already exists on my folder, so nothing happens. Now, the first command is how you start the Mongo server. To start the Mongo server, you use this command, mongod. And then you select a path to leave all your database files in. So the path that we'll select is our data folder that we just created. Now you can just type in mongod --db path, choose the database path, and the database path will be data. Then we enter. And all of these lines pop up. And the thing that you want to check to see is that at the end, it says something like waiting for connections, or it says initializing full-time connections on port 27017. That means that Mongo server has started successfully. If there's no errors, if it doesn't exit, if it looks like it's correct, then it already started. Now what we will do is we open up a second Node.js command prompt. This command prompt will be used as the Mongo console. What the Mongo console does is that, we have these command prompts, and each of these are consoles. They are consoles that allow us to traverse our operating system, our folders in our operating system. Now, Mongo console allows us to, it's like the command prompt for MongoDB stuff. We have control of it when we type in Mongo. When a Mongo server is running, if we open up a second command prompt, this is the second command prompt, we hit Mongo, we type in Mongo and start it, we have access and we can have full control over our MongoDB server that we just started. So open a second command prompt and type Mongo and hit enter. And it says, welcome to the MongoDB shell. By default, you'll connect to a test database. And this test database, it's just a test database. The name of the database that I use for this project, I called it Node Test. To use a different database, you just type in the name, and if it does not already exist, it will create one. So for instance, I do use Node Test. I just name my database Node Test. You can name it whatever you want, but you need to be consistent. If you name it something like Blue, then you need to use that name always. So I'm going to switch databases and use Node Test. And it says switch to DB Node Test. So we switch to a new database called Node Test. Now, third, we need to install a few more npm packages. So we will open up a third terminal and we'll install these new npm packages. This is something that you have to do. And what we will be adding is MongoDB, because npm is a package for MongoDB. Mongoose works with MongoDB to provide easy looking MongoDB models. And what these models are is basically, let's say we have a user, and this user has a first name, last name, email, and password. Then we want our database to know, like, this is the structure for a user. That's what Mongoose does. It helps with the structuring of every component. Passport is used for authentication, and Passport local is used along with Passport to provide sessions. Express sessions works with those three to assist with the sessions. Connect-flash is for errors. Not just for errors, but more like messages between requests. bcrypt-node.js is you want things to be secure, so we use bcrypt for the hashing. And that's about it. So we can copy this command, and using our third terminal, we just paste it, and we hit enter. Oh, actually, no. We don't do this yet. We need to go to our project folder. So you want this command to be done in our project folder. I didn't realize that I wasn't in my project folder. So again, I'll go to desktop. Now we run the command. You can use up to go to previous command. So we do this. We want to be in the project folder, and then we run the npm install --save. So it will install those packages. It will take longer for you because I've already installed these. So what it did was it just double checked that I already had these installed. Now, there's a part in the blog post where I say I add a lot of new files. So please check out the source code to see what I added. And this video will just be an explanation of what I added. Now, an important thing is I'll open up Sublime. I'll find my project folder. Alright, so first thing is this db.js file. Now, in this db.js file, I added something called this MongoDB //localhost. Localhost refers to our IP, our machine, our computer. And you place the name of your database here. The name that we will be using in this tutorial is Node.test. And up here, I say connection to the local MongoDB database named Node.test. I leave all these comments, which are signified by this format, and these will be helpful hints on what the file does or what the line does. So basically, that's the first thing that we do. We add the connection to the local MongoDB database. Second thing that we do, I changed app.js, which was what I called our hub file, basically our controlling file that controls all the other components, initializes them, imports packages. And what I did first was I connected to that db.js file. I also connected Mongoose, which is used for structuring for our models, and I told Mongoose to connect to the database that has URL as its name. So basically, if we look at app.js here, I just say we use db.js to connect to a specified database, which in this case is called URL, and URL refers to the Node.test database. And so we use dbconfig, which requires ./db. ./db refers to a file, which is db.js, and Mongoose refers to the Node modules Mongoose package that we just installed. So that's what you do first. You connect to your database. Now, the second thing that we do is I use Passport and Express Session for authentication and sessions. So what I do is here, I'd say import a passport for user authentication and Express is used for sessions, for user sessions. And I leave this part. So what we do is we use require. Require, you can think of it as just as an import. So we import passport, and then Express Session, we import a second package, Express Session, for the sessions for users. Then we use app.use to integrate these two packages. We use Express Session, and there's this secret key that you can name this whatever you want. Usually people put in a hash value for something because this is kind of your key, but you can name it whatever you want. I just named mine secret key. We make sure that we can resave and we can save uninitialized true. And we use passport to initialize it, and we use its session for app.use to start these two packages up. And I also use connect-flash. So connect-flash middleware is used for sending messages. I use it in this case for error debugging. I refer to a lot of these this code based on a tutorial site called Tuts Plus, and I refer to it in my blog post if you need extra explanation. But basically, connect-flash is only used here for sending messages between different website files. Init passport refers to files that I added in the passport folder. There are 3 files to set up authentication. Passport's used for authentication for the users and sign up. Login handles login, which we will check later, and sign up handles signing up new users. Init is kind of a central hub that says initialize, login, and sign up to get started. So what I do is you can use require to refer to custom files that you create. So I say require, look inside the passport folder, and then trigger the init.js. So it triggers everything inside this init.js file, which we will check later. And lastly, I changed the routes a little bit. So in the beginning, the template that was created had this var users route. I deleted that file in the folder called routes/users.js. So I deleted that file and I added a new one called blog post because I wanted a kind of a commenting section within the website to show you how everything works. So I added a new route. And so I just commented the var users and added this new route var blog post. Now you can see that the users.js in this routes folder is deleted if you were following part 1. And then now there's just blog post.js. So that's what this part means. And then at the end, you need to say that you're using it, like app.use, and it refers to /blog post, like so. And I commented out the app.use/users, users. Alright, so that's basically all the changes in app.js. You can check GitHub. If we look at GitHub, we go to app.js, you can see the full file here, so you won't get lost. Alright, so in the blog post as well, I leave links to most of the files. Now the second thing that we want to do is we're going to focus on the MongoDB stuff before going to users and signup. So models. In the models folder, we see a new file called user.js. Now user.js refers to the models. I separate these things according to views, models, and controllers. This is kind of the main setup. I do things a little bit differently, but it's very important that you be organized. If you ever create really big code that serves to many users, then one thing that you want to do is, if you recruit anybody to help you, engineers, you always want your code to be as organized as possible. So I tried to make this as organized as possible as a template to be used. Models refers to all the database structure for every type of data that we will store. For instance, in the user.js file in the models folder, it has the structure for users. In this case, I want a user to have a schema. These schemas are basically the setup of the user. What does a user have? A user has a username, password, email, first name, and last name. This is what I'm giving a user. And then we use Mongoose to create a model out of this setup. And then we export it so that it's available to all the other JS files that refer to this file. That's what module.exports equals user means. Basically, I do this for user and blog post because we need a way for a user to create a comment or create a blog post. In this case, for the blog post, a blog post schema, the blog post has a user ID. Every model with Mongoose creates automatically an ID. So in addition to username, password, email, first name, and last name for a user, it also has an ID. But it's not listed here. But everything is given this underscore ID. And we'll see it later in a little second. So basically a blog post connects it. When a user creates a blog post, I just store the ID that the blog post was written by. So the user has an ID, it stores ID, and then we allow the user to create a title and a post. And then we do the same thing. It's the same structure. There is some information up here. Blog post stores the user ID of the user who wrote the post, title of the post, and the contents of the post. That's how blogpost.js works. So those are the models, and you need these models. Mongoose just organizes pretty nice, and so you can create a couple files, and it's pretty well organized. Now, what we want to do next is look at the passport folder. Passport folder has a bunch of stuff. Now, the first thing is credit to Tuts Plus and their authentication Node.js application with Passport, because that's where I found most of the information to do this part. And most of this part is copied from their post, the Passport stuff at least. So basically what I do here is whenever you need a package, you need to require it. You need to import it here. So we import Passport, and then we import a couple files because this initiation.js is referring to initiating these login and sign up. And then basically what happens is app.js says look into Passport, startup init.js. And then what init.js does is it says startup login and sign up. That's how it works. So it's just a domino effect. Basically, for the Passport stuff, authentication for users. So first thing is Passport needs to serialize and deserialize users to support persistent login sessions. That's what these two things do. They serialize the user and deserialize the user. Then finally, we have these two functions. These two trigger /passport login.js and /passport /signup.js. All right, let's take a look at login.js. So in login.js, we see a bunch of stuff. The main thing to look at is this part. So basically, it's a couple of Passport things that handle authentication. And basically, this is triggered when someone tries to log in, this function. What happens is we refer to the user database. Basically, I import user again. The local strategy is used for Passport to authenticate, and then bcrypt is used for hashing the password for secure. It's not easily stealable password. It's a secure hashed password. All right. So in this function, we use Mongo and check if a user with that username exists or not. User.find1. Basically, we refer to the model, right? The model was called user. And up here, we see that we're just referring to the model and we just call it user. That's where this user comes from. So we say, does the user exist or not? Because someone's going to type in their username and password, and then we're going to have to check if that username exists. If it does exist, well, okay, let's go down the list. If there is an error, this is how it works. Basically, user.find1 will see if there's a user or not, and then it will return and then trigger this function. So this function checks if there's an error. If there's an error, then hey, we're done. We're not gonna go again. We're gonna just exit, basically. If there's not a user, because what is returned is if there is a user with that username, then this thing has a value. It will have the username and user information based on the model. So if there's no user, if the user doesn't exist, then hey, there's just not a user with that username. We use request.flash to give a message on the page, and it says user not found. If the password is not valid, then we just say invalid password. And if none of these if statements are triggered, then hey, everything works. We return the user. We have this function is valid password. It uses bcrypt to check if the password matches. Bcrypt uses this compare synced function to compare the hashes of password using the bcrypt algorithm. That's the main stuff to get from that file. Now, init.js also triggers signup.js. And basically what signup.js does, it uses password again, uses signup. We import the user model as well as bcrypt again. And basically, instead of we have to find or create a user. Basically, in this function, we find a user because we need to see if the user already exists. So in any case of error, return using the done method. If the user already exists, then log the error. It's the same find one function that we used in login. If there's a user this time around, we don't want two users with the same username to create an account. So we said the user already exists. And if there is no existing user, then we create a user. There's just going to be a sign up form, and basically it triggers this. The sign up form has username, password, email, first name, last name, and we just fill the model. We use this create hash parentheses password with this function here. We use a hash to, we generate a salt to hash the password so that we have something secure. We don't want someone easily figuring out what passwords our users have. And basically we use this, we take the new user and then we use the .save function because Mongoose provides these functions that allow us to save easily new entries. So we save the new user in the user's model, and if there's an error, just say there's an error printed out. But if there's no error, then log it, user registration was successful, and return the new user. That's how those three files work. It's not the best explanation, but basically you can get the gist of it. When you log in, there are a couple errors that you expect. You don't want people with the wrong password signing up. For sign up, you don't want two users with the same username to sign up. Basically, all of that is handled with these three main files for authentication, creating new users, and logging in. Alright, that was a handful, but now we'll move on. The next part is the routes. Now the routes have significantly changed. Basically, before we only had this thing. We had these two, right? Now we add a bunch of different routes. Basically, there's something with websites called get and post. If you don't already know this, get is used when you visit a site like google.com and then it shows you the whole website, Google. That's what get is. It just shows you the page. Now for things that access to the database, we need to use a post request because the user is sending us data to store. So this is what is called a post request. And we have to use post request for login and also sign up. So what happens with these new routes is the main thing to check is the login and sign up. For the post request for login, we use Passport, we authenticate, we use its login method, and then if it's successful, then redirect to the home page, and if it's failure, then redirect it to the slash. Basically, how the site's going to work is you go to the site and then you go directly to the login page. Sign up works the same way. We use Passport using the authentication with sign up, and then we success redirect to /home. If it's a failure, then go back to sign up. And if everything works well, then we go to this new route, the home page, which is /home. But if the user has not signed up, we trigger this is authentication. If the user has not logged in or signed up, we trigger is authentication, which says if user is authenticated in this session, allow access to the page, but if not, redirect the user to the login page. That's exactly what we do here. So we check if it is authenticated, and if it is authenticated, then we return next. If it's not, then we redirect. That's how the new routes work. Basically, this main route, index.js, is changed to support login pages, sign up pages, and a home page. That's all it does. And then lastly, there's a logout one, which is over here. It uses the request to log out and then it redirects to /. Now blog post is also a new route that I added over here. Basically, there are two main parts. Alright. So there are a bunch of these things called controllers, and how I set this up is that controllers will be used to manipulate the models. Before we get to the blog post route, we need to check this controller out. Basically, what I do is whenever I want to manipulate different models, I want to put it into the controllers. I create a file called blog post controller, which manipulates everything that I want to do with blog posts. So basically what I want to do with blog posts is with this blog post controller, I create an empty constructor. Basically, it's just this entity. It's an empty object, right? And there are two main things that I want this controller to do, to be able to do. I want it to be able to add posts. I want it to be able to add new posts. It's similar to what I did in signup. In signup, basically how the people at Tuts Plus did it is that they just created a folder for Passport because it's very isolated. This is Passport is what's used to handle login and sign up, so they put it in Passport. But if there wasn't anything called Passport, I would have created something called user controller to separate what controls the models, what controls things that I need to do inserting, deleting in the database. So basically in sign up, I create a new user like so, and then I just save. I want it to be organized, so I created something called add post, and what I do, I create new blog post and then save it. And then that's basically, if there's an error, then return the error. If not, then return the new blog post. Now I add a couple more functions for listing all posts, and you'll see later on why I have list all posts and list your posts. Basically I use blog posts and then I find empty. Basically with this empty is you find all the posts, but at the bottom here you find ones that match your user ID, so your post. That's how these two functions work. And so in this route, what I do is I import the blog post controller up here, and then I use its functions. Whatever is returned in this variable. So basically I return post and your post. And then if there are no errors in error 2, then I render. And then in part 1, I explained to you how the variables work. You can carry any variables into the views. So basically, I bring post and into post, I call it post, and then your post. So I bring all the posts, and so I just render the page and bring those two posts, your post and everyone else's post. And then here with our post request, I want users to be able to add new posts. So I use blog post controllers add post function, and I create a new post with the user. I just bring the data that's provided over here. I basically, this add post function is taking data. Data contains the user ID, the title, and the post from a form that you'll see later on. And then lastly, we'll just briefly go over views. Now in the views, I changed everything a little bit. The new things is that you'll see these new forms. Basically how you use post requests is that you need this kind of setup, and I'll let you guys to digest it a little bit. But here in the index.ejs, which is the login page, I have a form for username and password, and then submit. Basically what happens is that you see this thing called post. It triggers post, and it's called login post. And so it takes all this information and provides it to our route. If we check out the route really quickly, we see that on our login post, it authenticates login, and basically this triggers login, which is over here in the passport folder, and it gives username and password. That's how it works. It's kind of confusing to start off with, but these forms are basically any information sent by the user who visits the site, random user who visits the site, random person visits the site, tries to log in. It's sent over first to our route, which is index.js. Index.js sends it over to the passport files, login.js, and then login.js absorbs it. It uses login, so it takes login from the route and then takes it the username and password. Same thing with sign up. You can see sign up has a form, triggers post request, and triggers sign up. Username, password, email, first name, last name. And post.ejs, here's the part where we see a lot of new code. This symbol with the pound symbol is for comments on EJS. So this is just a comment, it doesn't actually appear on the page. Now the new things that we see is we see if statements. So if statements just say state a conditional. Basically I check if the on this page, which is the post page, I let users look at all the posts that have already appeared from different users. And if the post.length, which is an array, is greater than 0, I want to loop through that and then give the titles in the post. And if not, then just say there's no post. You'll see it in a little bit. It's hard to explain these things if you don't have the programming background, but you'll be able to see what I mean when I actually show you the site. Do the same thing for your post. And then at the very bottom, it's another form for giving new blog posts. Okay. And the home page just takes the user because we're passing the user on the home page, and we just print all their information and we give the logout right here. Alright, so I think that's enough explanation. It's not the best explanation because there are so many moving parts and there is just so much to explain depending on your background. Let's get this set up though. Okay, so as always, just look at the GitHub source code. Now, local running. So if you already set this up, perhaps you'll just copy a few files that you're missing using git clone. I state most of the files here with these links, like for instance, these new routes, these new views, the git ignore. I leave direct links over to those files. Alright, so now we use npm install bar install in Gulp. So basically how I set things up is that a third terminal will Gulp watch. In the first part of the series, I said Gulp watch was used to automate the Sass conversions. The only Sass change that I really added was I added this small one where a button was at the wrong place. You'll see it in a little bit. So we use Gulp watch to watch any of these SCSS changes. If this file changes, then we want it to render into CSS over here. And then we use npm start to start the whole Node.js server. Alright, so since we already have a third terminal out over here, I'll use Gulp watch on it. Alright, local Gulp not found in this folder. Okay, so if that's the case, then I'll just run this command again. To install everything, because I might be missing Gulp. Alright, we'll take a second until this installs completely, but afterwards I should be able to use Gulp and should be able to use Gulp watch. But in the meanwhile, I'll open up a new Node.js terminal for starting up npm start. And I always like to have a fifth terminal just for anything that we might potentially need while developing. If you have a Mac, I'd suggest tabs instead, but I'm using a Windows machine. So I will go to my folder. Alright. Let that install. And have this fifth one ready. Okay. Alright, so now I'll try Gulp watch again. So it's watching for any Sass changes. So you leave this running typically. And then with the fourth terminal, you just do npm start. And it shouldn't have any errors like so. If it does have errors, then you may have missed a step. So what do we have right now? Basically, I have 5 terminals open. One of them is the Mongo server. It started the Mongo server. The second one was Mongo for the console, in case we need to do anything special with the Mongo console. Then third thing is Gulp. Gulp is watching for status changes. And fourth thing is the npm for the actual Node.js server. If we go to localhost 3000, we'll see this is what the site looks like. Simple site, sign in, sign out. Let's try to log into Microwave Sam, type in a random password, and sign in. It says user not found. Okay, well, yeah, because we don't have any users. So error messages appear down here. Sign up. Let's make a new user called Microwave Sam. Let's make a random password. So let's use my Microwave Sam email. Microwave Sam. And we sign up. Alright, once you sign up, you go to this home page. And it shows you your information. Microwave Sam at Gmail, Microwave Sam. Alright. So we have two options. We can write a new blog post or log out. So let me show you what blog post looks like. So here we see that we visit to blog post and it says no post. We can create a new post and post something on here. So basically I can be like, subscribe to Microwave Sam as a title and say like sub exclamation point, and then I can hit this post, and what happens is that it redirects back to blog post, and it shows subscribe to Microwave Sam sub, and it's subscribe to Microwave Sam sub, because here is my post, and then here is everyone else's post. So that's how this commenting feature works. Then we can go back to homepage and we can log out, and it maintains the session. For instance, let's say that I log back in and then I sign in. Alright, and then I go to localhost 3000 /home. It retains this, so there are sessions involved. Now, if I log out of both and go to /home, you know, what if you're not logged in? Can you go to /home? It doesn't work. It redirects you /. So that's the is authenticated part, where we saw in the routes, we saw this is authenticated. If user is not authenticated, then redirect the user to login page because they're not signed in. Same thing happens if I go to /blog post, like so. If I'm not signed in, then I won't be able to. Now let's create a second user. Let's create a user called Microwave Sam2. Or actually, first I'll show you, you cannot create a user with the same username. So if I use the same username and I sign up, it says user already exists. So you cannot create two usernames. So I'll just name it Microwave Sam2. And I will sign up. And it says Microwave Sam2. So as long as the username is different, this is kind of a simple setup because I allow the same emails to sign up. But basically, usernames just have to be different for this template. I can go to blog post. I see all the posts available. So I see the first user to Microwave Sam, and it says sub. Now I'll write this Microwave Sam2. You're an imposter. And I post. So now I have the second comment, or a post, and then I say you're an imposter. And I can see what posts I've already done in a different section. Go back to home page. If I go to /home here, the sessions are involved, so I'll log out. And if I refresh here, because I logged out in one site, one part of the site, then it logged me out in all parts of the site. Now I can sign back in as the original Microwave Sam. and I can go to blog post. I see Microwave Sam 2's blog post. So posts refer to all the posts available from all users, and your post refers to what matches the user ID. That's all there is to it, and that's the basis of the whole site. Now the last thing that I want to do within this tutorial, it's been a long tutorial, and I've tried my best to explain everything. I'm not the best explainer when it comes to programming concepts because there's just such a variety of experience involved with programming. But the last thing that I want to really get to is what do we do with terminal number 2? No, I explained you always need to have terminal number 1, which will do the Mongo server, and it will listen to connections. And I explained terminal number 3 watches for SAS changes. You keep these up during development. Now, terminal number 2, you do not need this to be on while you're developing. This is just for your power, your control. After you do use the name of the database, which is node test, we can see all the collections. Collections are basically all the models, users and blog posts. So we have 2 models. And now some basic commands for the Mongo console. You can look it up on the Mongo documentation. But basically, we type in db, and then we type in the name of the collection, and then we type in the command that we want to do. For instance, do db.user.show, I think. What was the command? I briefly forgot it. Maybe I wrote it somewhere. Sometimes I forget these commands myself. What we can do is we'll look at the Mongo console documentation. Alright, so show collections, prints a list of all collections for current databases. Alright, so here it is. So it's probably fine then. What we do is we do db.users.find. I did show instead, and we can see if we do just find like that, then we can see all the users that we have available. You can see here there's user 1, and each of them has this underscore ID with a random ID. Well, it's not the first part is random, but then it ends up doing like some concatenation. So what we can do here is we can also do the same thing with blog posts. We can just simply use the console to control find, and we can see all the blog posts. We can see the one that says subscribe to Microwave Sam, and then the second one that says you're an imposter, Microwave Sam 2. And it also has a UID. So we can see that C4 ties to user C4 here, and then C6 ties to the ID down here. So Microwave Sam 2, these IDs work. Like a post is connected to a specific user, and it works. Now, the second useful thing is removing stuff. You have the basic commands here: insert, update, save, remove. Let's say that I want to remove all the users. Well, I just do db.users.remove, and I put in this curly brace, and then I hit enter. So it says write result and remove 2. Now, if I press up a couple times and do users.find, I see that there are no more users. That's how you remove things. So remove just deletes the documents, and if you want to delete the whole database collection, then you can do this. Drop. But I wouldn't recommend dropping things, because drop is just a dangerous command to do, deleting things completely. If we do show collections, we can see the difference in remove is that the user's database still exists, but if we use drop, then what would happen is that this would be erased, which we don't really want. I can do the same thing with blog posts so that, when users are deleted, blog posts are also deleted. So I can do db.blogpost.remove, and then always do the curly braces when you want to remove everything. If you want to remove a specific thing, then I think what we do is we can do post : sub like so, and then it removes one. So basically I removed the post that said sub like that, and if we do db blog post dot find, we can see that there's only one. So here, write result only remove one. Basically, in these curly braces, you can remove specific users, specific blog posts, and this is how you have full control with the Mongo console. It is a little bit difficult, and a lot of you may prefer GUIs, but seeing here with these commands, these simple commands, it's easy to understand. We have all the control. We can do whatever we want. We can delete based on ID, we can add, update based on ID, we can delete based on the post name, the title name, etc. And so we have a lot of control with the console, so I'd recommend to use the console if you want like very detailed management. And last but not least, we'll just delete everything in blog posts. And so it removes the last one. Like so. So db blog post is empty. I just used this remove command to remove everything else. And so if we refresh this, basically it redirects us because it doesn't recognize that microwave Sam 2 or 1 is existing user. If we try to go with microwave Sam and log in again, sign in, it says user not found. If we try to sign up with microwave Sam, it brings us to microwave Sam, and we can check with the Mongo console, db_users.find. It has the microwave Sam user again because we just created with the sign up. So that's basically it. There was a lot of content, and I want to fit this into 2 tutorials. Look at the GitHub source code, look at the blog post for more information, and if you have any questions, leave comments below. It was a very long tutorial, but hopefully you learned a lot, and thanks for watching.